So when we build training materials, one of the things we really need to consider is why are we building it, right? Why is it important to the facilitator? Why is it important to the participant? Really, the participant, the first one, right? And that's the one we always think about. But that why applies to other audiences, right? Whether it's obviously the learner, but it could be the facilitator, it can be the organization, and that's what we're going to look at today. Is we're going to high level look at the what I think are the four key audiences, and you can dive deeper. But if we look at the four, and then you will be able to take a look back and say, which one of these are a little bit different for our organization or for our environment, and make adjustments as needed. But the more we can pay attention to each audience, the better our training is going to be. So with that being said, let's get this started today. All right, so thank you for joining me for an early edition of the L&D lunch hour, right? So maybe it's somewhere out in the Atlantic, it's lunchtime, but it's my niece's graduation weekend, and we've got to drive up to Maine today. We got about a 6 or 7 hour drive, so wanted to get on the road a little early. So I appreciate you guys tuning in earlier today. And for those who weren't able to attend live, you can catch it on the replay on YouTube or on LinkedIn. But we're going to talk about today how we can look at, looking at the different audiences within our training material, or when we're building training materials or we're leading trainings, how each audience member how it relates to them. So high level, what we're going to look at today, audience matters, which we've kind of already talked about. So maybe we'll kind of breeze through that one a little bit. Then we're going to look at the my four key audience members: the learner, the facilitator, the stakeholder, and the organization. And then kind of, sum it all up. This one is really a lot more. We're looking at this is more of a thinking cap type episode more than take away actionable things. Now, obviously it's actionable to, let's say, what do we learn? What did this make me think about? And now go back and see how it applies to us. But like walking away saying, hey, I know how to do X, Y, Z. We'll look at that in another upcoming episode or session on, how to build towards a specific audience member. So with that being said, let's, look at, why does the audience matter, right? So I think the first one, the easiest one, and it's one we're going to probably spend the least amount of time on during this session, is obvious, but it's the one that everyone thinks about, is the learner or the participant, right? Why is, what is in it for me with them, right? The more we can talk about why this training is important, or we can make that audience member, so the audience member, in our case, let's say the participant, if we can make them aware of why it's important to them, put it in a way that's going to make it relevant to them, and they're able to then go in and find ways to be more engaged, right? It's a whole other session we definitely need to talk about, is engagement and effectiveness. But there's got to be ownership within each audience member of why they're invested into the training, right? But as developers of training, designers of training, we need to basically, feed into each audience, getting them the pieces that are going to feed to what, their general wants and needs are, right? It's think back about, let's just throw everything out there today. Learning styles, right? So whether you believe in learning styles or not isn't the important part in that one, right? It's the perception that people have on those, right? If someone perceives that they learn kinesthetically, or they learn by reading or by doing, they're more apt to be engaged in ones that they feel it feeds into the way they learn. So we should, in building training, we should find ways to engage all those different learning styles, right? So that we can pick up and keep the people who feel this is the way they learn best, keep them engaged. Same concept applies to audience, right? So if we have a general idea, and we're going to go through, my high level ideas, in general, what's important to each of these audience members. And then what you're going to want to do is look at look at these audiences or figure out the audiences within your own organization, your own environment, and figure out what their wants and needs are. And I think a lot of them will align with what I'm showing today. But if there's other ones, keep those in mind now when we develop, so that we can get all the material in there, right? So we're not just building for the learner. We're not just building for the organization, and so on. We're building in a way that's going to meet the needs of each of our audiences. All right, so first one that we're going to look at is, the one that I think everyone should plan on building for, but it's the learner, right? The participant. And so what's important to them? So first thing I always think, learners, participants, they want problem-centered training, right? They want training that's built in a way that's going to solve or help them do something that they need to do in their job, right? So it is, I don't know how to tie my shoe, right? Hopefully you guys do, but just that's the example that popped in my head. I don't know how to do this. So let's go through some training that helps them do that piece, right? Now they can tie their shoe, and now they don't have that an issue, and they're, right? That's the idea. We build training that's going to solve a specific problem that they have. All right. After that, they're looking for career development. They want training that's going to propel them into the next pay grade, right? Into the next role that they want. So here's a piece, and it's something in adult learning theory, the idea that the learner wants to be in control. The learner, they want to be actively involved in the training. It's a mainstay of adult learning. I think there's a caveat to that, though. The learner is interested in what's important to them, right? Again, why training's important, why we need to consider audiences, is we need to be able to talk to what's in it for me or what's in it for them for each audience, right? Just because it's important to the organization or important to a stakeholder does not mean it's necessarily important to the learner. So we've got to manage our way down some of these pieces. All right. So those are the two things. And again, the learner we spend a lot of time at, right? That's our general job. We worry about the learner. I think it's the other ones we don't spend as much time thinking about. And these are not in any, other than, the learner's number one. The other ones are not in any particular order. All right. So next one, the facilitator, the trainer. What's in it for them? And you know what? I could have actually you could put facilitator / designer and developer if you wanted to. They are a little bit different, right? They each have different needs. Sometimes your facilitator is your designer or developer. Sometimes it's not. But kind of in this, they kind of fall in the same, they're in the same area code. Let's put it that way. But for the facilitator, one of the main things is they have to make sure that the participants are meeting the program objectives, right? Are you a successful facilitator? One of the things are the people that are going through your training getting what they need? Are they meeting the needs, or the... Well, it's early, right? I drew a blind by. Are they meeting, the standards that we're set for these trainings, right? So facilitator needs to be able to go through and make sure that they're getting the learner to the program objective. Same time, they got to make sure that they keep the stakeholder, the person who needed the training built, happy. And what does that mean? And that will kind of circle back to when we talk about the stakeholder as an audience member. But so at this point, they're serving, they've two bosses, right? They've got to serve the learner to get them where they need to be, and at the same time, they need to keep the stakeholder happy. And as we go through this, and as sometimes as I'm talking through this, kind of opens up my mind. The facilitator almost has one of the most difficult jobs because they've got so many bosses, so many balls they're keeping up in the air, right? this time they need to actually, they're there to help the learner, right? They're there to make sure the learner can get what they need out of it. Basically, we need to meet those program objectives, and we're there to help the learner get to those objectives, right? So meeting program objective, this actually is probably more tied to the organization itself than the learner, as I'm looking through these things. And then the last one is they're the voice of the organization, right? They're there to make sure that we're getting out what the organization needs. And in the eyes of the learner, they are the organization, right? So it's just things to keep in mind, right? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? What's in it for them? Facilitators got a lot of different hats that they're wearing, designers, developers as well. But this one is probably the trickiest one to navigate, to make sure we're meeting the needs, helping the facilitator meet all of their needs. All right. Third item, the stakeholder, right? So stakeholder could be a department within an organization. It could be an external client, right? It's the person, it's the entity that needs the training to be built. So what they're first looking for, they want to increase job performance, right? They've looked at something's not working exactly the way they want it, and they've, hopefully they've gone through we've gone through analysis and figured out training is the answer versus coaching versus a job aid. But let's say we've done all this and training is the answer. We've built out training, and the first thing they want to do is those objectives that we've built out is to get the learner to increase their job performance, right? So they want the people going through training to be able to do whatever it is plus some, right? All right. Next one, they want trained employees, right? They want to be able to achieve everything that their hopes and dreams, to make it nice and fluffy. But they want here's what we need to have done, and we need employees that are going to be able to do that, right? So they want better job performance, and they want highly trained. They want their employees to be highly trained to do those things. And lastly, they want the participants of the training to take on a higher role of responsibility in the organization, right? So they want, basically more responsibility pushed off. They want higher success, and they want better quality. I kind of tied all those things into one thing. But that's what the stakeholder's looking for, right? So how do we set up our training to get us there, right? And this, we'll dive deeper into these, like I said, in another session. This was more so just to kind of get you start thinking about those audiences, and so that when we do circle back to this in the next couple weeks, that we can, you can look at it more in terms of what it is going to be for your specific needs within your organization, your environment. And I keep saying organization, and then I change it over to environment, because I don't want to get us all confused with our fourth audience member, but I know I am. But the fourth audience member to me is the organization that's, training is being built for. All right, so first thing, the organization is looking to make sure their vision, mission, and, values of the of that organization are being lived, exemplified, right? We want our the people going through our training, we want our training to make sure that it matches to our vision, mission, and values. After that, and I guess this maybe is me in a hopeful world, but our organization wants to make sure that our training is tied to the competencies to do a specific role, so that we are basically developing our employees to be better in the role that they are, and hopefully then also getting them the competencies that they need to go into the role that they want or they're hoping to be in, right? But our training is tied to job competencies. They want performance increases, right? Basically, what you're doing, we want you to do more of it, and we want to pay you the same amount of money, right? Let's be honest, it's an organization. Most of our organizations are, publicly traded companies, or they're for-profit, and they basically want to get their money's worth and then some. So I'm not saying these are necessarily all, they don't always sync up, right? Like, the learner wants to, develop more, get into the role that they want, which probably includes as a higher pay raise. The organization wants you to do more, and they want to pay you the same thing, right? So it's the yin and yang of life, right? And again, it's understanding the needs and wants of each audience, and then how do we try to make everyone happy? And sometimes things don't quite come together nicely. All right, they want an engaged workforce, right? They want people, and think about the last time you've got that email from from HR, like, tell us how things are going, right? That the engagement studies, right? The Fortune magazines does, the top companies, or Forbes, top companies to work for, all of those things. All of that's tied to an engaged workforce, because an engaged workforce tends to stay longer. They tend to work harder, right? So we get, better performance. We get, people staying longer. I have less retention. I have less turnover, which leads us to our last one, which is increased retention, right? So the organization is looking out for the organization, right? At the end of the day, the organization wants what's best for the organization, which in a lot of times means they want happy employees, because they're, happy employees means like an engaged workforce, which means increased retention, which then means, we are paying less money to replace people, all of those type of things. But that's the idea. With all of these, we are trying to just understand what's in it for each of these audiences, because we can't just build for the learner, or for the stakeholder, or for the organization, because if we do that, we miss out on these other people, right? So if I build training just for the organization, and next, let me give you this, the what it all means, right? Let's kind of wrap this all up. But if we build just to one audience, we miss out on, like, if we make sure, I'm going to pop back over here to the learner, right? So if we make sure all our training is problem-centered and it's all about career development, we may miss out on what the stakeholder was looking for, where they wanted better job performance, right? Just because that problem that Bob's having, that we built training for, Bob's happy because that problem he had is solved, but maybe it doesn't increase job performance that the stakeholder was looking for. All right, so if we just build to one audience, whether it's the learner, whether it's the stakeholder, whether it's the organization, we miss out on the pieces that are important to the other people, and what would then say it's a successful training, right? Going back to, Bob and his, building training that's problem solved to him. He walks away happy, right? His issue is taken care of. But there's other learners, maybe their problems weren't taken care of. Or the stakeholder didn't get what they wanted. And now, is that a successful program or not? How do we judge this? Right? And so it's one of these ones that, there isn't a cut and dry answer on it. We have to go and figure out, and this is where I think I always kind of come back to definitions, terminology. How do we define if something's successful or not successful? Right? How do we evaluate it? All of those things, because we need to be able to look and say, all right, you know what? We built out XYZ training, right? Customer Service 101. Back to my, the one I always use in these things, right? We're working on phone etiquette. Was it successful? All right, was it successful with the learners? Did it meet what the stakeholders were looking for? Are we matching the values and mission statements of the organization? How do we tie all of these together and find that sweet spot where the why of training hits as many places as it can, right? And coming back, the last one, that facilitator, right? Facilitator, they're the ones who's doing all of this, right? They're the conductor in the orchestra, making sure that all the notes are played. We get through the whole musical score. Hence why we need a facilitator guide. Another, that's another. We can go back to that that horse to ride at another point, but we need the facilitator is the one who has to make sure that this is being led. All these places are being hit at once, but that means it's for the facilitator to be able to do it. We need to design and develop our training to do so. So keep all of these things in mind as you go through, as you're thinking about building your training. We'll call it the why of training, right? Why this training program is important. Why customer service 101 is important, and we should be able to talk to why it's important for the learner, why is it important to the facilitator, why is it important to the organization and to the stakeholder, and try to get those the WIFA moments for each of those into the training. That being said, I know it's early. I appreciate everyone coming in. Just kind of quickly, I've got my looking, we already went through these takeaways just a moment ago, but, just so we have them again, the audience does matter. We have our four key audiences. I would, though, facilitator could be the designer, could be the developer. You could lump those all in one place if you wanted. You want to break them out. But think about how, and I'm pointing the wrong way, point this way. Think about how this applies within your own environment, right? You may have different audiences, or your audience may skew a little way, or, what I had put in, let's pop back here to the organization, maybe these 5 things, 3 of them are important to your organization, but two aren't, and then 2 that I didn't even think about are, right? Write it down. Just so we can we want to be able to define all these things, and so that we can then work towards or keep it in mind as we're building. Question and answers, I know it's early, we're outside of our normal range, so I know a lot of people who would have normally been on aren't, but if you have question and answers about this, obviously you can put them in the chat right now if you want, we can go through them. But I think probably today we're going to be best off, for questions, just reach out to me directly. There's my phone number, there's my email. Feel free to reach out to me. Feel to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk about any of these. We are going to be, I will be back from Maine tomorrow or on Sunday. So I'm happy to, like I said, talk about any of these or anything else you guys need at, after that next week. And we will be actually, I think next week, next Friday, it's going to be a little bit, so this is L&D lunch hour out in the Atlantic. I'm actually presenting at ATD Tulsa. I'm doing a virtual presentation on Friday, right around lunchtime. So I'm going to we'll probably do a Pacific Coast lunch on next Friday. So L&D lunch hour for Friday, June 17th will be about 3 p.m. And then we'll be back to your regular scheduled time the following week. Obviously, doing these live streams, it is a learning experience, and we are going into the first summer of doing these. So kids being home, summer activities. I am still committed to doing this once a week. Times may have to be a little bit more flexible, or maybe I need to look at a different day, just depending. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud at this moment. But with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys all next week. All right, take care, folks.